You are watching the press preview, the first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the journalist and author Rachel Shabby and the Telegraph's deputy comment editor Annabelle Denham. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Daily Telegraph leads with the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman's call that the Prime Minister's Rwanda plan will fail unless he opts out of European human rights law. The Daily Mail's headline, unelected Lords plot to block Rwanda law that could end scenes like this. The Daily Express reports on the pro-Palestine protest at the Royal Artillery last night. The Financial Times suggests the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt could look to woo back older voters by cutting inheritance and business taxes. The Guardian's front page covers a story about dozens of women who have described the Ministry of Defence as having a toxic culture, alleging sexual assault and other abuse by male colleagues. The Ministry of Defence say they're extremely concerned about the complaints made. The Metro carries an admission of failure by Derbyshire Police after a young woman, Gracie Spinks, was killed by the man she'd told them was stalking her. The Eye warns of a new benefits crackdown if those with jobs don't accept work. The Times take on that story, look for a job or lose free NHS medicines. That reads the headline in the Times. The Sun reports on what it's called PC gone mad over officers being warned, saying the word policeman could be against the law. And the Mirror has an exclusive interview with the son of Christine Keeler. I'll clear mum's name. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Rachel Shabby and Annabelle Denham. Welcome to you both. Let's start, shall we, with the Telegraph and the ongoing migration story. But Suella Braverman is not going quietly at all and has passed further comment, quite damning further comment in the Telegraph. Rachel, you take us into this.
Yeah, well, presumably now she has a chance to, do as much as possible to undermine Sunak now that she's no longer in post. She's saying, this is her writing her first article since she was sacked as Home Secretary, and she's attacked the Prime Minister's approach. She says that Rishi Sunak has proposed a new treaty with Rwanda in order to get this plan passed, and she's saying that won't cut it. He needs to, quote, block all avenues of legal challenge, and she's got the entirety of European and human rights laws in her sights. This is kind of, I don't know what to call this. It's unhinged. It's unhinged. Wanting to block all avenues of legal challenge. It's really weird for a lawyer to write those words and not think, have I lost my way somehow? Am I the bad guy now? Because just the idea of tearing up laws when you're a lawyer, I don't know, it's just bizarre. The Supreme Court, when they rejected the Rwanda plan, made quite clear that it wasn't actually in reference purely to the European courts. It was also the UN conventions that we've signed up to do with protection of refugees. Also within UK law itself, we have very clear regulations on why we should not send people claiming asylum back to countries where they are at risk of harm. So that is what Braverman wants to tear up and is telling the Prime Minister to tear up.
Annabelle, she says that now is not the time to waste energy on a post-mortem of how we got here. What matters for those of us who believe in effective immigration control is how to move forward. This requires honesty. Above all, it demands of the government an end to self-deception and spin. There must be no more magical thinking. Tinkering with a failed plan will not stop the boats.
No, and I'm hesitant to disagree with Rachel straight off the bat. But actually, I think that having read it, Suella's piece is quite a good piece. It isn't just another angry hit piece on the Prime Minister, not like her resignation letter. It's very different in tone. I think she's trying to draw a line under what's happened until this point and is urging the government to move things forward. She is absolutely desperate. This is a woman who until Monday was our Home Secretary, who talked about seeing planes taking off full of migrants as a dream, and she's now trying to put forward practical solutions to this problem. Now, like Rachel says, I think while her piece has sense, it's very doubtful that you're going to be able to exclude all legal challenges. But nonetheless, it's useful that she's come out, she's urging the government to try and get things moving as quickly as possible. She wants to see action before Christmas. She's come up with solutions like embedding UK observers in Rwanda to try and address some of the Supreme Court's concerns. She's talking about detaining illegal migrants and new rules to deport them more quickly. That was something that came out in her resignation letter as well. Her suspicion that were the plan to be successful, were the court to rule in the government's favour, that there would nonetheless be endless delays. So you can still sense there's a desperation from the former Home Secretary to get this plan over the line. However, I think it's extremely unlikely. Really, what the government ought to be doing is looking perhaps to another third country, if that's a viable option, or indeed to a completely new scheme, because Rwanda now is a failed scheme that's never going to work.
Just on that second test, which is blocking all avenues of legal challenge. This is her 5-point, and the second test of it. We just got a comment in via X from Damien Green MP, and he says, the second test is the most unconservative statement I have ever heard from a Conservative politician. Given the state, the explicit power to override every legal constraint is what Putin or Xi would do. We absolutely cannot go there. And this is from a fellow Conservative.
Well, yes, I mean, we know that there are big divisions within the Conservative Party over asylum seekers, and that's being laid bare now. I think Suella Braverman played quite an important role in government. And clearly, she was a loose cannon towards the end, and she was undermining the Prime Minister, and he was left with little choice but to sack her. However, there is a silent majority, I think, in Britain today who feel as though their voices are not being heard. They're concerned when they see the seeming lawlessness of people crossing the channel. They don't like the idea that it might be leapfrogging others.
But no legal challenge being allowed. I mean, that's something that people might balk at.
As I say, I don't think it's realistic to say that the government is going to be able to block all legal challenges to its plan. It's just not something that it can prepare for. And the question really is, how bold is Rishi Sunak willing to be? Because, of course, when we had the ruling yesterday, he gave a speech yesterday afternoon. He seemed to be trying to reassure those who are very much on the right of the party that he was going to take the steps necessary to get the Rwanda plan off the ground. And it's interesting, on the front of the Telegraph, we're reading about Jeremy Hunt admitting that the government could not guarantee migrant flights would take off next year. James Cleverly, the new Home
Secretary... Slightly odd with the Prime Minister. I mean, let's move on to the Daily Mail, Rachel, and their story, bringing into the mix the Lords, who already seem to be in opposition and will provide a fight.
I mean, this is very much like a Brexit rerun in the sense that it is attacking the way our democracy works and the way the law works. Let's just rip it all up because we don't like it. I mean, these are the words of authoritarians. I wish you could just say that, Annabelle. This government, Braverman, that is an authoritarian thing to say. You won't say it because it's your paper that's printed her article. The thing about migrants risking their lives in flimsy boats to reach the UK, that is the issue that we have with this. It's migrants risking their lives. That's the problem with this. There is no legal route for migrants not to risk their lives in flimsy boats, and that's why they're doing it. And this silent majority that you're talking about, Annabelle, I'm sure that if you asked people in this country what they really care about, I don't think this is going to be the top of their list. I think they're going to say cost of living, stagnating wages, rising prices, housing market, crisis, absolute crisis in the housing market. See, these are the things that really that people really care about. This is a manufactured, invented crisis to keep the real issues off the front pages, and that's what we're seeing today.
Well, I mean, I disagree. I think that a lot of people do care about illegal migration. That's not to say that people aren't profoundly sympathetic to the plight of genuine refugees. And one point that I would make is that I don't think the government has been sufficiently nuanced here. It has failed to acknowledge that there are no safe and legal routes for people unless they're coming from countries like Ukraine or Afghanistan or Hong Kong.
And even then,
and it's been dismissive of that as a problem.
So you agree that they have been dismissive on that?
I think it's an issue that they have failed to address head-on. They've been very desperate to get the Rwanda plan off the ground, and that has become synonymous with illegal migration now. There's an idea, isn't there, in the public domain that if they can get planes to Rwanda, then this problem is going to stop. Well, of course, it's not.
Let's just quickly get one more story in. That's on benefits, and it's the new benefits crack down if jobless don't accept work. Rachel, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is coming from Jeremy Hunt, the head of the autumn statement. This is what we're expecting to see in it, and it links into the times also where the idea is to say to people on work benefits that they will lose things like access to NHS medicine if they don't attend things like job fairs and if they don't accept jobs that they might not want to. I think this is slightly missing the issue with why we have so many people out of work and who are claiming sickness benefits in particular, which is that we have a lot of people sick in this country, much more than in comparable countries in Europe. Part of that is to do with the fact that we have an older population, but actually a lot of it is to do with the fact that people are just in poor health. And again, that's because of austerity, that's because of welfare cuts, that's because the hospitals are on their knees, that's because people have chronic conditions, including mental health issues, that aren't being dealt with by this government. If you want to get people back into work, make sure they're a healthy workforce.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Rachel Shabby and Annabelle Denham. Let's have a look at the front page of the Financial Times. And this is a story that's kind of been mooted in the weeks coming up to this point, that perhaps the Chancellor will effect some tax cuts, and they're talking about inheritance and business tax cuts, something that previously he'd said that he would definitely not be able to make any cuts, and now it seems that they might be about to happen.
Yes, he's been the Augustinian Chancellor, hasn't he? I do want to make tax cuts, just not yet, but with the autumn statement just around the corner and economists suggesting that there's more fiscal headroom for tax cuts than was previously forecast at the spring budget, the pressure is definitely mounting on Jeremy Hunt to pull some rabbits out of the hats. Now, we've had trailed this week that inheritance tax and now business tax cuts are in the Chancellor's sights, that he will be either raising the thresholds or tweaking the amount when it comes to inheritance tax. And I wonder whether, when he stands up at the dispatch box, he will say, well, it's been rumoured that I'm going to be tweaking inheritance tax, but actually I'm going to abolish it altogether. Now, this is a tax that brings in £7 billion a year, which, in my view at least, is fundamentally immoral. People pay taxes when they're alive. They shouldn't also have to pay taxes in deaths. It has a distortive effect on our economy, and it causes so much additional pain to people who are bereaved and have lost loved ones, and there are often delays associated with it. So it's also a widely unpopular tax. So I think this would be a good move for the Chancellor. Business tax cuts are the same. If he could make full expensing permanent, it's due to expire in 2026. That would also be popular with entrepreneurs and businesses. You know, this is really, in my view at least, the only thing the Conservative government can do now is try and cut taxes, because while it's all very well the Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride, like we were just talking about, discussing plans for welfare reform, there simply isn't going to be time to do anything that's going to have a tangible impact.
Have you had a steer on the abolishing of inheritance tax at all? Is there anything
I do,
to share?
No, not at all. It's just that previously, when we've heard, in the days before a budget or an autumn statement, that something might be changed, thresholds raised or amounts lowered, or, whatever it might be, that perhaps the Chancellor is intending to go a bit further,
that would be
we'll
something.
see.
Rachel, what do you think? Potentially good news? Then?
No, I think that would be terrible news. I think the problem with our tax system is that it doesn't tax unearned wealth, of which inheritance tax is one way of doing it, taxing profits, taxing that kind of thing.
The money's already been taxed.
The problem we have in this country is gross inequality. We have massive, growing, widening inequality.
The Gini coefficient has remained
and the only way you
flat
can
for the last 30
redress
years.
that, the only way you can redress that is to tax unearned wealth in the same way that you tax income.
But it's money that was earned in people's lives, which they've paid tax on, and they've saved.
They've earned it.
They want to pass it on to their children.
They've earned it. Yeah, but that's one of the causes. That's one of the main drivers of inequality. Is the fact that people.
Rachel, I'm afraid
everybody's wealth.
I'm
Talk about
afraid
seizing, I
we've
said
run out of time. You can continue this
Same
discussion
thing.
in the break.